on a farm or for an organic producer. I'm just a highly opinionated private citizen that buys a lot of organics, mostly organics actually. So I realize that the synthetics topic has been delayed and isn't going to be voted on at this meeting. And I find that a little bit concerning since, as I understand, delaying it is creating an indefinite grace period in which food processors can keep unapproved ingredients in their products. So therefore, I'd like to urge you to move forward as quickly as possible and for the USDA to begin enforcement action to ensure that organic foods are free of unwanted ingredients and unapproved ingredients, even if they're nutrients. I believe the majority of organic consumers don't want synthetic ingredients of any kind in their food, not even if they are supposedly nutrients. As an organic consumer, if I want vitamin C, I eat an orange. If I want beta carotene, I eat a carrot. If I want iron, I'm going to have a cheeseburger. You know, it's real food. And I strongly suspect that, you know, other organic consumers feel the exact same way. And I suspect that the actual motivation for synthetics being proposed for inclusion in organic standards is, you know, not due to them wanting to be able to make our food healthier with their artificial nutrients, but more so that the chemical companies providing them can jump in on the massive organic market and get their piece. On a different topic, I realize genetic engineering is not on this agenda either, but since they will inevitably petition for inclusion at some point in the future again, and since I have you here as a captive audience, I would simply like to say that as a consumer, I would never, and I'm sure most other organic consumers will never either accept GMO inclusion into organics. So without going off on a tangent, which I easily could, just please keep that little nugget of information in your mind when the subject does come up, because I believe it inevitably will. With the biotech pressure that squeezes down on the USDA and the FDA to promote their agenda, we cannot depend on them to keep genetically modified, untested, unproven, healthy items out of our food supply. So we are reliant on you to at least keep them out of the organics.
You may not realize it, but every day that you go to the store and walk the aisles to the supermarkets, you're looking at hundreds and thousands of products made with genetically modified ingredients. Now, there's only 8 genetically modified food crops, but they include soy, corn, cottonseed oil, canola oil, sugar from sugar beets. These 5 are in, I would say, 70% of the products in the supermarket. Now, why is it important to know which products are genetically modified? Well, if you listen to the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, they say that every doctor in America should prescribe non-GMO diets for everyone. They point out that genetically modified foods, when fed to animals in laboratories, have shown reproductive problems, immune system problems, accelerated aging, dysfunctional regulation of cholesterol and insulin, organ damage, and gastrointestinal disorders, to name a few. Let's take a look at reproductive problems. If you happen to be an unfortunate rodent fed genetically modified soy in a various experiment, you may end up with damaged testicles that change from pink to blue, changes in the ovaries and uterus. The DNA of the offspring functioned differently at the embryo stage. The babies were smaller, the babies died at 5 times the rate, and by the 3rd generation, most lost the ability to have babies. Some had hair growing in their mouths. These are astounding results, but you won't hear them from mainstream TV and mainstream media because they've largely been close-lipped about the subject of the health dangers of genetically modified foods. That's why it's important to educate yourself about these dangers so you can choose healthier choices as recommended by the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Now, how do you choose non-GMO foods? Go to nongmoshoppingguide.com nongmoshoppingguide.com. non-GMOshoppingguide.com. You can download a free non-GMO shopping guide. You can look at all the categories and see thousands of products that are non-GMO. And you can learn about some of the health dangers and why it's important to avoid GMOs. Now you might ask, how is it that our government, with the Food and Drug Administration, how could they allow such dangerous foods on the market? Well, the answer is this. I think you'll find it, let's say, interesting, maybe even funny. The policy of the FDA says that the agency is not aware of any information showing that these foods, these GM foods, are significantly different. And on that basis, they say absolutely no testing is necessary. No labeling is necessary. You don't even have to tell the FDA if you want to put a GMO on the market. So companies like Monsanto, which is the largest GM food crop producer, they're the company that told us that Agent Orange was safe and DDT was safe and PCBs were safe. All lies. They've been fined, convicted, fined $700 million just for the PCB lies. They're in charge of determining whether their genetically modified foods are safe. Now, why is it that the FDA gave Monsanto that opportunity to determine if the foods are safe? Well, the person in charge of policy at the FDA was Monsanto's former attorney, later Monsanto's vice president, now the U.S. food safety czar. And the sentence in the policy, which claimed that the agency was unaware of information showing that GMOs were different, was a lie. 44,000 secret internal memos made public from a lawsuit from the FDA's own files shows that genetically modified foods are unsafe and that the scientists at the FDA repeatedly warned of allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. They had urged their superiors to require long-term study, but were ignored. Now, 20 years later, evidence shows that their concerns were validated, the scientists were vindicated, but we're all of a sudden in a situation where we're eating dangerous foods. Now, the scientists that discover the problems are often fired, stripped of responsibilities, forced out, denied tenure, denied funding, denied access to GM seeds. The scientist in Russia, for example, who tested the GM soy on her rats, and more than half of the rats' babies died within 3 weeks, she was told that her boss was under pressure from his boss. She could do no more genetically modified research. In fact, papers were burnt on her desk as a method of intimidation. Samples were stolen from her laboratory. Typical, but very unfortunate. We have a situation now where we have the biotech companies using tobacco science, which is largely rigged to avoid finding problems, supported by a largely ignorant government that thinks GMOs are the same, feeding it to humans, and we're now seeing, since GMOs were introduced in the mid-90s, an upsurge of very serious diseases which could easily be promoted because of the genetically modified foods. So it's our job to individually, on our own, study the problems and make healthier choices. To learn about the problems, go to responsibletechnology.org. responsibletechnology.org. You can watch free videos online like Hidden Dangers in Kids' Meals, because kids are most at risk. Or the video, Everything You Have to Know About Dangerous Genetically Modified Foods. Or the milk that is from cows treated with bovine growth hormone, which increases pus in the milk, and antibiotics and bovine growth hormone, and IGF-1, which is linked to cancer. You can find that at a video called Your Milk on Drugs, Just Say No. You can listen to audios, read articles, and you can join the Tipping Point Network, where you can help with the outreach, bring this important and crucial information to others to create a tipping point of consumer rejection to force GMOs out of the market. This happened in Europe. Within a single week, virtually every major food company committed to stop using GM ingredients. And that was when the tipping point was achieved. That happened when a single food safety scandal caused 750 articles to be printed in Europe. 750 articles within a month. And that created the tipping point of consumer rejection, which forced GMOs out of the market. Same way, parents learning about the health dangers of bovine growth hormone, they've been kicking out the bovine growth hormone from most American dairies. It was kicked out of Walmart's milk, and Starbucks, and Yoplait, and Dannon, most American dairies. So we now have a plan to engineer a tipping point against genetically engineered foods. Go to responsibletechnology.org to sign up for the Tipping Point Network and be sure to sign up for the free electronic newsletter to keep you informed about the health dangers so that you can help protect yourself and your family. The key is this: the government is not protecting us, we have to do it ourselves. But right now there are millions of people seeking to avoid GM ingredients. Be one of those people, stay healthy. And they saw it explode in Europe. So we think 5% of US shoppers, 5%, 15 million Americans would be sufficient to cause the drop in market share, to demonstrate a trend, and have them scampering for non-GM ingredients. And so I ask you to please join me in this wonderful endeavor to speak for our great-grandchildren, to speak for our gut bacteria, to speak for the oceans, and to reclaim a non-GMO food supply. Thank you very much.
I'm the owner of Small Planet Organics, currently located on Vashon Island, Washington, and I've been producing organic tofu for over 18 years, starting in eastern Washington and now residing in western Washington. And I produce, along with Island Spring Organics, also on Vashon Island, which has been doing organic tofu for over 35 years. So between the two of us, we have over 50 years of experience, and we've been committed to organics from day one, and certified as soon as certifying was part of our program. And we've been working with the WSDA as our certifying agency, and as most people know, that was pretty much part of the pilot for getting the National Organic Standards put together. And what I wanted to come and address today was the issue of GMOs, which everybody's real aware of now, but over 90% of the soybeans grown in this country are now GMO, so we pretty much have the most threatened crop that we know of. But it doesn't mean we're taking it sitting down. But there seems to be some confusion now. The NOP states that non-GMOs are part of the excluded methods on the list and everything. But what's happening is there's other agencies now that are coming up and saying that they have to confirm that products are non-GMO, but the organic standards from the NOP says we're not supposed to have GMOs. So the consumer's getting confused. The producer, we're not as confused, but we're a little miffed that now we've established long working relationships with our organic certifying agency, and putting together a lot of time and energy for our documentation and working relationships. And now there's another agency, the Non-GMO Project, that's coming up and saying, well, you need to work with us so that we can ensure consumers. So the consumers are getting confused, like, wait a minute, organic means non-GMO, but there's this non-GMO project that says you got to be certified non-GMO. So there's some confusion out there, and I'm really here to just try to point out that maybe the NOP could empower more the certifying agencies to work more closely so that we can totally assure people that if it's organic, it's non-GMO. If it's non-organic, sure, another agency should be able to step in and help that out. But if we've made this commitment to being organic and non-GMOs is part of our stand on it, then working with the agencies could be real helpful. And I've worked very hard to establish working relationships with the farmers that grow my soybeans. I've been to their farms. I know them personally, and bred with them all the time. And they're on the front lines trying to protect our food. And we're doing everything to support them, and we need to just be able to take that and carry it through.
I don't know if you've ever seen the presentation Food Inc., but one of the things that I would really like to know is where you stand on Monsanto.
Well, Monsanto, let's see.
Keep in mind, we do have only 15 minutes.
Well, in 1999, when I heard a report on public radio about monarch butterflies being injured by the migration of genetically engineered pollen onto a milkweed on which monarch butterflies feed, that got my attention because I thought, wait a minute, there is some intervention here in nature and there is a consequence. What's this about? Well, I did some more studying and I found out that in 1992, that the Food and Drug Administration made a decision that genetically modified organisms, genetically modified food, is the functional equivalent of conventional food. They made this decision without the depth of research into the functional characteristics of genetically modified organisms, antibiotic resistance, the safety, so many things that weren't looked at. So I proposed legislation for the labeling of genetically modified organisms. This was 12 years ago. Monsanto immediately went into action. They had an extraordinary advertising campaign they began to run in the United States with men in white coats, and these are the men in white coats you never want to be taken away by, believe me. And you know, with little petri dishes saying that they're going to feed the world, noble purpose, except that the precautionary principle dictates that before we start consuming unlimited amounts of genetically modified food, I mean, hello, if we are what we eat, wouldn't it be nice to know how this food works in our bodies so we'll know what we are to become? Wouldn't that be interesting? So Monsanto had this great advertising campaign that was aimed really at knocking down any attempt to bring about a labeling. Well, since then, I've introduced legislation in successive Congresses for labeling, for safety testing, and to protect farmers who have seen their crops damaged by the genetically modified pollen drifting onto their crops. But Monsanto has been able to have extraordinary success in advancing a whole wave of products, including including seeds that are Terminator seeds that are aimed at stealing the agriculture of indigenous peoples. They've tried to do that in India, they're trying to do it in Haiti, and so we really, if we're talking about coming to resonance with the natural world, we need to know how our food is made. We also need to support organic farmers, neighborhood farmers, local farmers, buy organic, buy locally grown produce, and read about what's genetically modified.
Would you be supportive? Would you help us organize a group of members of Congress to introduce a constitutional amendment to abolish corporate personhood?
Yes, but we have to do more than that. We have to move to strike down the Citizens United with a public financing campaign so we can really have a government we can call our own and not one that's bought and paid for by corporate interest. You know, if you have private financing of campaigns, you have government in the private interest. You have public financing campaigns, you have government in the public interest. And so we think about the preconditions for life. The air, the water, the land, but we also can't think of it in terms of our own selves. There's a type of thinking that puts mankind at the apex of all creatures, great and small. But there's another type of thinking that is holistic and integrative, that says that we are part of a seamless web of life, and that we have no claim to existence that should supersede that of any other creature who's part of life. And in effect, that we're all in this together.
I'm the president of Arkansas Egg Company. We're a dedicated organic egg operation in Summers, Arkansas. My family's been in the egg business for 3 generations. I appreciate all your time and effort in ensuring that the organic process is one that the consumers feel worthy of. My primary concern is the manipulation and erosion of the organic standards in shell egg production. The egg business in general is a highly fragmented, rapidly consolidating, cannibalistic market, and the organic egg market is quickly on its way to that. Egg producers operate on low margins and high volume. It's the adoption of this principle that is the main reason that several major caged egg producers have utilized aviary housing for organic production. Furthermore, the absence of specific standards pertaining to stocking densities, indoor and out, as well as a lack of definition for soil has also contributed to this and fueled the fire. There's a variation in organic egg production today that's alarming. It ranges from 85,000 birds in one house, 500,000 birds on a farm, all the way down to 2,000 to 3,000 birds on a small family farm. The board needs to follow with the proposed recommendations on animal welfare. This is the only way to ensure the spirit and intent of the law is met. We have a unique opportunity to preserve an environment where a producer with 1 barn can compete with a producer who has 100 barns, apples to apples. Anything less would destroy the market for the consumer and the producer alike. There's a vast majority of producers who support change. They support outdoors on soil and stocking densities at set limits. These thoughts are echoed by probably well over 100 producers and well over 30% of the production. We need your help to stand firm in the marketplace. Lax standards have created an environment where in the last 5 years we've seen 3 to 5% of producers exploit certain aspects of the standards and grow to represent about 30% of the total marketplace. If not stopped, this trend will continue. It's ultimately we will begin to produce least cost or get out of the business. A vast majority of grocery buyers will speak with their pocketbooks and their ideals second. We've got to get a standard in place that allows for uniform and consistent supply. And with my last few seconds, I'd just like to say that I think welfare does matter in organic livestock production. I think that's why eggs and milk have a higher penetration than other items. Consumers can speak with their emotions when they buy that product, and outdoor access is a part of that. I also think that the FDA program should focus on their objective inside the house and not on the pasture, and that you guys should echo that opinion to them.
I'm from Oregon State. I've worked on fire blight research now for 20 years, and much of it on alternative products. I just want to go through the OMRI list for the alternatives we have and why we're pessimistic about control with those products that we have now. And if we look at the screen there, I've got stigmas circled as one target of a product, and the floral cup as circled as the other target of a product. And next slide, please. We have these gram-negative bacteria blight band bloom time. They're targeted early bloom, or they're looking to colonize the stigmas. That's where the pathogen increases itself and then spreads flower to flower from those populations that develop there. And then that slides down into the floral crop. These help to control fire blight, but they're not standalone products. They're about 30 to 50% effective generally. Next slide. Late bloom is where oxytetracycline fits in, and in the Pacific Northwest here, it's our niche product. We want it to sit down in the floral cup, and it does a good job of preventing infection. Alternatives we have are Serenade Max, and it by itself is a very poor product. And we have guys out there now slamming in the IOP program, slamming trees with Serenade Max and getting some results, but it just is not a good product on its own. And then we have this yeast that's coming along, Blossom Protect, and we think it's also fitting into this window. Next slide. We get better control if we put the two products together, a stigma product and a floral cup product. And the examples I've got up there are Bloom Time Biological and oxytetracycline, or Bloom Time Biological and then the yeast, which is sliding off the screen there. Next slide. Here's an example. Water is that blue bar on the bottom, almost 200 fire blight strikes on a tree. Streptomycin is the top. It's a standard. We're using a streptomycin sensitive strain. We see 1 bloom time, 1 oxytet giving pretty good control. Then we see 2 bloom times and 2 blossom protects giving really pretty good control in our research plots. So you can see there that we've doubled the number of treatments, but with non-antibiotic approaches, we're getting pretty good control. Next slide. All right, so this is the issues we have right now. We just started working with the yeast, and we don't really understand why it's effective. That's number one. Number two, it's yet unregistered. Number 3, we've got a learning curve. Lots and lots of individuals are going to have to learn a new way to control fire blight, and there's many, many people out there. Number 4, the cost of control is probably going to go up, and I don't know what impact that's going to have on production, but that's going to happen. And then finally, and it may be the most important, is this distribution of biologicals. And when antibiotics go out to growers, they get almost the same product that we do as researchers. When it comes to biologicals, we're always working with the very best products, and I'm not always sure that growers get the best products when they get it on their farm from the companies. And biologicals are much harder to handle, and we get really good stuff, and I'm not sure that's always what happens out there in the distribution chains. So reinstating Oxytet on the NOP list would provide time to work through these issues.
I'd like to ask 2 questions. One is, you've been working on this for 20 years, so this is going to be a continuum for you in terms of continuing to work on it. Where do you see the timeline in terms of the effectiveness of what you've already identified in this presentation? Do you need 5 years to bring that to a better fruition? Do you need 10? And then the second part of that is, how many parts of the country need to participate in the same type of activity? And what's your rough idea of resources in an order of magnitude? Are we talking millions? Are we talking tens of millions? What are we talking about?
I don't think we're talking even millions. We've done pretty good on this, I think, so to date with pretty much a shoestring budget. Over the years, we've been funded by grower groups in the Northwest here, and also by the USDA through these competitive grant processes. And I think that grant they're talking about is probably mine that didn't get funded last year, but I don't know.